Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Joe. Welcome back to another episode of the Inside Our Phillies podcast. Today we have a solo episode for you. This is the first time in a long time that there's been a solo episode. I'm actually pretty sure that the last time was when the Dodgers beat the Phillies last year in the NLDS. So, been a while, but glad to get this episode out for you today. The Phillies literally just lost Sunday's game in the series 4-3 as the Diamondbacks won the series over the Phillies 2-1. And I think that we have a lot to jump into. I think there's going to be a lot of people talking about the game today. So let's jump right into that game today. This was a game where it was kind of chaos from before first pitch, right? We thought Andrew Painter was going to start. He was having migraines, which first of all, I emphasize completely with him on that, as somebody that also suffers from pretty debilitating migraines from time to time. It's not fun, right? It's so much different than a regular headache, and I feel so bad that he has to go through that. And massive props to him for being able to come into the game after Zach Pop threw 2 innings. I think it shows a lot that Andrew Painter was kind of able to come out of the bullpen because I'm sure he was, prepping last night, maybe even this morning to start, which didn't end up happening. So honestly, a lot of respect to Painter for that. And he pitched pretty well. The numbers are pretty strong with him having 5 innings of 3-hit ball, only allowing the 1 run while getting 7 strikeouts. I think you are going to have some people point out, and I would kind of agree with the take, that he was not getting whiffs on his fastball, right? This is something that we've seen in his first couple of starts, and it's continuing to this third start. The breaking stuff looks really good. The split change is kind of electric. I think having Cole Hamels on the broadcast, it looked a little Hamelsian, you could say. The curveball was looking really sharp. It's a beautiful curveball. But that fastball is going to continue to be the problem, I think, for Andrew Painter. And it was not like a great lineup that he went against today without Ketel Marte and everything. But still, I think we'll happily take 5 innings, 1 run from Painter. He is kind of like the least of our concerns in this game. I think one of the bigger concerns, and for what it's worth, I don't think the sky is falling after this series. I know just kind of scrolling on Twitter, scrolling on Reddit, scrolling on Discord, which, by the way, link to our Discord is in the show notes. If you have any questions, put them in the podcast channel there, and we'll get to it in series. But yeah, I think you're seeing a lot of people kind of act like the sky is falling right now. And I think that there are reasons to be concerned. I think there's absolutely reasons to be worried about this team. But I'm not quite at the point of panicking yet. But there are a few things that need to change, a few things that I think we need to really monitor, because things could start to teeter as we kind of head into the second half of April. It's still very early in the season, but nonetheless, Jose Alvarado has to be better. Jose Alvarado was not good today. He allowed a couple of hits in just a third of an inning, and he kind of got lucky that it was a bad bunt by Geraldo Perdomo that allowed Marchand to make a pretty nifty play and throw out Corbin Carroll at second base. But Alvarado is not looking sharp. The velocity is down from where it was, and I just continue to think that he might be hooked. It's Occam's razor. The most simple explanation is usually the correct explanation. And the most simple explanation for Jose Alvarado is that he needed steroids, right? He was starting to see his stuff drop off. He took steroids. He looked great. Then he got suspended. And then he wasn't great when he came back, and he's continuing to not be great as we head into 2026. I know that there's a lot of people that say that the Phillies have handled the Alvarado suspension differently than they did like the Kepler and Rojas ones. And that's true, but maybe he did need the performance-enhancing drugs, right? Like, even if it wasn't something that he did intentionally, I don't think we have any way of knowing. He might have just needed the drugs to be a productive pitcher as he's kind of aging and as he's losing some stuff, and that is kind of what it is. On the plus side, Tim Meza looks spectacular from the left side. Right now, on the left side, I would have Alvarado as third behind both Banks and Meza. I think Mesa's been one of the bigger surprises early on in the season, and I'm starting to really trust Tim Meza. But again, on the downside, we saw the Phillies come back to their base running mishaps today. I don't think the Phillies have been a good base running team for a very long time. Bryce Harper, he hit a single. It was very clearly a single, not a double, and he tried to stretch it into second base and get a double, and he toot blonde. I think that we are so used to seeing that from Bryce Harper. It's frustrating to see. And at this point, right, if you haven't accepted that that is who he is already, it's time to accept it because, this is a guy that's been in the league for 15 years now. Nothing is changing. It's not getting coached out of him. It is what it is, right? Like, it sucks. It annoys me every single time. Running his outs on the base paths is like so preventable. But you know what? With Harper, you just kind of have to take the good and the bad. And his hitting has continued to be better. And that's good. But I think where you're seeing most people concerned about the lineup right now is kind of like the Garcia, Bohm, Stott contingent, right? Stott and Bohm, there have been concerns about them for a while. Bohm now hitting 148 for the year. Stott's below the Mendoza line. Garcia, after an over 4 day, he's hitting 204 on the year. And it kind of seems like things just die when that part of the lineup comes up, right? Early in the year, it seemed like things died when the top of the lineup came up. But those guys started to rebound. And now it's just kind of the second half of the lineup that is really struggling. And I know that a lot of people are talking right now that the Phillies only scored in 3 innings of a 3-game series. They only scored in 3 innings. So, it's 11% of the innings that they're scoring runs in, which is much below the average in baseball, which is, closer to about 4 innings per game that you're scoring in. So, not great. Not great on that front. And I think this lineup just having so much width is the biggest contributor of that, right? Like the Phillies are pretty deficient at kind of being able to scratch runs across the plate. I know that in modern baseball, things are not about kind of bunting guys over, hitting singles the opposite way, stealing bases. Like that's just not what the game is these days, right? But you can still scratch across runs by doing that. You need to hit home runs. You need to have those crooked innings, which the Phillies have been adept at getting those crooked innings. But what the Phillies have not been adept at is just scratching across runs, right? You see so much whiff in this lineup. Schwarber strikes out a lot. Harper strikes out a lot. Marsh strikes out a lot. Garcia strikes out a lot. Bohm has been striking out a lot. There's just not many guys that you can trust to consistently put the ball in play other than like maybe Justin Crawford. I mean, obviously Justin Crawford's BABIP right now is well above 400 and that's going to fade. But to his credit, he hits the ball in play. He creates chaos and havoc on the bases. And that's what we like to see. Also, secondary to this is that the Phillies don't really steal bases, right? Like I feel like I could only recall a few bases that the Phillies have tried to steal this year. Especially you haven't really been seeing Turner steal a lot, Crawford steal a lot, because these are the guys that are hitting before Schwarber and Harper. So you're just kind of limiting their ability to run on the base paths. I was talking about this with a good friend of the podcast, Owen, the other day. And you kind of look at like the run expectancy chart, right? Like the percent of the time that you're scoring when you have a run on second base versus a run on first base with 1 out. It goes up 20%, right? You score 42% of the time with the runner on first and 1 out, and 62% of the time with the runner on second and no one out. But if you get thrown out and then you have bases empty, then your run expectancy is 16%. So 16% of the time you're scoring a run. But if you're stealing well, right? And the Phillies have not gone against catchers that control the base as well. We are not going against prime Yadier Molina right here. We're going against James McCann. And James McCann is not somebody that is good at controlling the bases. But the Phillies haven't taken advantage of that. I want to see them be more aggressive in smart ways on the bases, ways that you could potentially, realistically, get an extra base. Because the odds of stealing a base are what? 80%, you can say, on average? Something like that. The odds of an extra base from Bryce Harper just randomly running to second, they're much, much less than 80%. The odds of whatever Marsh was doing today, when there was a second two blonde, when Marsh was just on second base and he stood there and kind of let himself get doubled up to end the 8th inning, that's not doing any good. That's like a dumb risk. That's a dumb risk. If you know that the ball's in the air, pop fly, you got to bust your ass back to first base so you don't get doubled up in that spot. That is basic baseball. It's basic baseball. And I think that's what makes this team frustrating for so many people right now, is because the simple things they are not doing right. I am not some kind of baseball boomer, right? Like I accept that things are changed in baseball. I enjoy modern baseball in a multitude of ways. But you are going to upset people when you are constantly getting the fundamentals of the game wrong, when you are getting yourself out on the bases, when you are giving the ball to people that can't be trusted in high leverage situations, when you are striking out constantly and not getting the slug, right? If you're striking out a lot, but you're also getting the slug, you will take that. But the slug has not been there, right? We are now 15 games into the season, not a big sample size, but the slug has pretty much been what we expected. Schwarber hits home runs, Harper hits home runs, and you kind of take what you can get everywhere else, right? Garcia's hit a couple, Turner hit one at home this year, much earlier this year that he hit his first one at home than any other time last year, which took until like late in the summer. So it's frustrating, right? And then I think that you have a secondary concern because Citizens Bank Park is starting to turn toxic to this team. Um, I think that we've talked about this in previous podcasts, and I think it's only continuing to be more and more true. Fans like to boo in Philadelphia. Right or wrong, that is the way it is, right? This is a fan base that likes to boo, and I think that you have the right to boo, right? I am not somebody that boos frequently when I go to baseball games, but I think you absolutely have the right to. But this team, some of the guys, they just might be a little bit fragile mentally. Like I'm talking to Bohm here, right? Like I don't think Bohm can handle the booze, right? Like we can't forget the I fucking hate this place Bohm from 5 years ago or whenever when everybody turned on him in the moment and he apologized. Everybody forgot it a couple of hours later. But I think that Citizens Bank Park is an environment where players are either riding with it and they are really succeeding and thriving, or it's an environment where people struggle. They feel like they're running, into a massive headwind and they can't make progress. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. The Phillies going 3-3 on a West Coast swing is better than them winning one of three against a mediocre Arizona Diamondbacks team at home, right? And the Phillies will have opportunities in the rest of this homestand to rectify that. But let me tell you, things are really going to get bad if all of a sudden they lose 2 out of 3 to the Cubs, who just got swept by the Pirates. And then after that, we have the Braves coming into town in what will be pretty important games, right? The Braves are off to a big head start in this division. They have a 2-game lead if you go by the loss column over the Phillies and the Marlins. Marlins who are ahead of the Phillies by a half game right now. Things are going to turn if these next couple of series don't look good. They already are starting to turn, but things have to improve quickly. So let's go back a little bit to the game yesterday, the Taijuan Walker start, because I think that this was a game that people, including me, if I'm being honest with you, were writing off as a loss. Taijuan Walker has not been good this year. I don't really think he looked particularly good on Tuesday or on Saturday as well. But he did his job. He got kind of teed up in the first inning. His velocity on his fastball was several miles an hour slower, actually, in the first inning than it was in any other inning, which is interesting. I don't know if he's not conditioning, not preparing for games. But you kind of saw the first inning get out of hand, and then he somewhat rounded into form, picked up 6 strikeouts over 5 innings of work before Meza, Kerkering, Alvarado, Keller, who's actually been much better. Keller, I know the ERA might not say that he's been great, but Keller is somebody that I solidly trust at this point, and Duran closed it out. This game, to me, again, is frustrating because when you're getting 5 innings, 2 runs out of Taijuan Walker, like, we should be happy. We should take that as a major victory. But unfortunately, people are coming in with such a negative, like, precondition against this team that they cannot appreciate that. The Boo Birds were out very early in that game in the first inning, and I get it. but it is contributing to like this toxic environment that Citizens Bank Park is becoming. And you know what actually probably has made this toxic environment even more toxic? Was this offseason, right? Like, I think you go back to everything that, truthfully, the Phillies have created. The Phillies were the ones that chose to essentially run it back. And then after the Phillies ran it back, you have the front office and the manager of the team saying that they're not running it back and that the team is so much different because the bullpen is different. But I think that they know that that's still running it back because the bullpen is probably what fans perceive to be the least important part of a team, and that, if the lineup looks, almost entirely the same, people are going to think that it's running back. And if the pitching staff is still pretty much the same, people are going to think it's running it back. Obviously, Painter and Crawford are some new guys, along with Adolis Garcia. But the Phillies had the opportunity to make things different. The Phillies had the opportunity to make a trade for Yandy Diaz, who something that I advocated all offseason. And Yandy Diaz is off to a torrid start, OPSing above, I think, 1,100 so far this year. Or actually, right now, he's at 1035. Yandy Diaz already has about one baseball reference score, .9. That's the kind of guy that would make a big difference on this team. So we're sitting here on April 12th, and we are panicking, but I think monitoring the situation has turned into being concerned about the situation. Because while it is only April, right? Like, you don't want to get ahead of yourself and say that the season is over because the Phillies are 7-8 on April 12th. But I think that we are now concerned about the situation instead of monitoring the situation. Because this next week could very well be an inflection point. It could be an inflection point. If you lose a series against the Cubs and then you lose another series against the Braves, you're all of a sudden going to be looking at yourself 5 games back, 6 games back of the division. Now, what I will say might make this a little bit easier for some people to take is the Mets also struggling. The Mets have lost 5 games in a row, 2 to the Diamondbacks, and then they got swept by the A's. So a little bit interesting there. And now the Mets are flying out for their second West Coast trip of the season already on, going to the Dodgers and going to play in Los Angeles. Weird scheduling this year. So Mets might pick up a couple other losses there. But I'm kind of standing by what I was saying earlier in the year, that the bigger concern for this team is not the Mets. I think the Mets are fine. I don't think the Mets are going to end up being some hard team. But I think the Braves are the real competition for the Phillies, especially as they start to get healthier. And we know how horribly unlucky they were in spring training. And the big guys, right, Austin Riley, Acuna, these guys have not really turned it on yet. The Braves are going to be the big concern for the Phillies this year. So I don't know how much personal satisfaction, how much personal relief that I get out of the struggles of the Mets, personally. That's just how I feel about it. But anyways, I'm kind of all over the place here. Hopefully that's okay with you all. I'm kind of just going over my feelings because there's a lot to say, I think, about this series. And I'm just trying to get into this as well as I can. But back to Friday night's game, the first City Connect game of the year. Also for better or worse, right? Luzardo just wasn't sharp, right? Luzardo didn't make it through the 5th inning. He allowed 5 runs. The bullpen didn't allow anything in their 4 1/3 innings of pitching. But it just was not enough, right? The Phillies kind of wasted that 4 spot that they had in the first inning off of Soroka, who ended up looking quite, I don't want to say brilliant, but he looked great by the end of it, picking up 10 strikeouts, trying his career high. And again, you're seeing the same guys come up and struggle. Garcia, 0 for 4, 2 strikeouts. Bohm, 0 for 4, 3 strikeouts. Stott, 1 for 3, 1 strikeout. Whatever. Real Muto, 0 for 4. Crawford, or 1 for 4 for Real Muto and 1 for 2 for Crawford. The back part of the lineup is now the part that's killing them. And baseball is a sport where you are not going to have all of your guys click at once, right? Like, I remember going back to like the 2019 season, and everybody said when this lineup is clicking, it is going to be absolutely insane. You have Andrew McCutchen, you have Bryce Harper, you have Didi Gregorius and Gene Segura, and all these guys. They're so great, and they were pretty good. Um, but you're never going to have in baseball a consistent stretch where everybody is going off at the same time. People say that basketball is a game of runs, and within a single game, it is, right? Like, you have a team go on a 10-2 run, and then, there's an 8-3 run going back the other way, and that's the way that basketball kind of flows. Baseball flows in a similar way, but it's on a season level, right? Like you have a month where somebody can't get it done, and then all of a sudden you have a hot streak. Like Rhys Hoskins was known for just absolutely being torrid for weeks on end and kind of taking over entire series, entire weeks, carrying the team on his back. But right now, I think that the Phillies just don't have that stabilizing force. Like you would like to take some of the inconsistency, some of the stratification there, but you would also like to have guys that are less swingy and that are more consistent. And the Phillies just don't really have that. Like, call me crazy if you want, but in a lot of ways, I think Crawford is one of the more consistent players on this team, just because he consistently hits the ball in play, right? Like the strikeouts from everybody else just kind of make it so that they're less consistent. And I don't know. We have talked a lot about how this team has not necessarily been constructed the best. And I do think that Dave Dombrowski and the Phillies front office carries a lot of blame for how this team is constructed. But at the end of the day, some of these contracts go back before them too. But most of this blame to me does go on Dave Dombrowski, to be clear. I just want to make that pretty clear. So let's go over a couple of the top Reddit comments, just to kind of hear what the fan base is saying in the post-game thread. First comment we have from First Resolve. There is absolutely no reason to not try Sosa at third until further notice. And you know what? I agree with that. People that have listened to this podcast for a long time know that this is an Edmundo Sosa podcast, and that on a rate basis, he's been much better than Bohm across his career. And I know that a lot of people say that, when you overexpose Sosa, his numbers struggle, but I don't think that's true to the extent that it was true with, Phil Gosselin or Brad Miller or somebody like that. And Swimming Elk 3058 had pretty much exactly that in response. I've been in favor of this for a while. Sosa has twice the career Baseball Reference WAR of Bohm and less than half of the career at bats. He is straight up a better player. And at least when Sosa steps at the plate, he provides good defense and base running. Bohm is literally not above average at anything, which is kind of fair, right? Like, I think Bohm is the one that's carrying a lot of brunt for the frustration of this team. I think it's an easy way to at least try something else. And I'm totally in favor of this idea. We're kind of talking about third base. It kind of came out today that Aiden Miller might not be playing in the minor leagues for months. At the very least, it's going to be weeks. It was a concerning update. And when the Phillies were asked what exactly the specific issue with Aiden Miller's back was, they cited HIPAA and said that they were not at liberty to say what was going on with Miller's back. So that mystery is kind of concerning some people. I am not a lawyer. I do not know what I'm talking about. But from my understanding, HIPAA only applies with like medical personnel talking about somebody's medical status, right? Like your employer or your family member or something like that. HIPAA laws don't apply to that, right? Like if I broke my hand and my friend told another person that I broke my hand, that's not violating HIPAA, right? Since the Phillies offer medical services to Aiden Miller, maybe that makes it a little bit different. But I don't know. But I've long been on the side of Alec Bohm probably getting a non-tender this past offseason, saving the money that you could then invest into depth starting pitching or extra help in the bullpen or a platoon partner for Brandon Marsh or something like that. But unfortunately, right, like they have Alec Bohm and he's here for the year, and that is what it is. And I think for people that think that the Phillies could just like trade Bohm and get something back for him, like who's trading for him, right? Like this is a guy that has at this point less than a year of team control. He has known attitude issues. The Phillies have kind of overvalued him several off seasons in a row. This guy's stuck, right? Like the only way he's really getting off the team is if you're kind of attaching money with him, maybe attaching a prospect, or if you're just DFAing him, which I don't really think is going to happen anytime soon. But I will say this: if Aiden Miller comes back, whenever he comes back, and he has a good start in AAA Lehigh Valley, I think there is a real possibility of change being made, and Alec Bohm kind of finding his way to a less prominent role on this team. Next comment was from Status Ability 6867. This is the same team we've watched the last 5 years. Nothing is going to change, especially not now. If that upsets you, I'd recommend not getting emotionally invested in April baseball. This team does not do the little things right, and the manager doesn't maximize his roster. It is what it is. For the most part, I also agree with that, right? Like, I think that the reason that the Phillies have less goodwill is because this is the same team that we've watched for so many years in a row. I think normally most fan bases, including our own fan base, would not be this pissed off and not this ticked off on April 12th if it was not the same team that we've watched for so many years in a row. The goodwill that this team had got in the city after 2022 and after 2023 is completely gone. If I'm being honest, for me personally, it was probably gone several years ago, like probably towards the end of 2024 and certainly by the beginning of 2025. The goodwill that I had was gone, and I could see where this team was not being kind of built in the most sustainable way. But you know what? I don't know. The Phillies have made their bed, and they kind of have to lie in it. Next comment from Bryce W123. Scoring in 3 of the last 45 innings is crazy work. It is pretty crazy. I know earlier I mentioned that it was 3 in the last 27. I guess that did come right on the heels of them kind of having that streak of not scoring in San Francisco. So yeah, that is pretty crazy. Bryce, only 3 in the last 45 innings of scoring any runs is not great. It's not great. Kind of scrolling through for some more comments. Another one, North Coast Toast, great contributor on the subreddit. The season is going to end with the team at 500, 81 and 81. They are bang fucking average. You know what? I could see it. That was how the 2012 Phillies went, and I think the 2012 Phillies vibes are very strong right now. Kind of holding on to a core as they start to age, and people don't want to acknowledge the fact that baseball players age. We've seen the same thing, right? Like, I think we've talked about this before, but when you have guys that are massively overperforming, and we got great years out of Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, Chris Sanchez, all these guys last year, you're going to get some natural regression to the mean. You bake in age-based regression on top of that for a lot of these guys, and it is kind of abhorrent that these warning signs were not seen and not dealt with in time. And I am not writing the Phillies off for this year, because I think these guys are still good enough and they're not past their prime to the point that they have nothing left. But where I am at is that things are going to look bad in a few years. Unless the drafting and developing completely changes. And for what it's worth, over the last decade, the 3 best hitters that this organization has developed are Rhys Hoskins, Alec Bohm, and Bryson Stott. That's not sustainable. That is not sustainable. The money that the Phillies have spent have been a Band-Aid, and the only way that they've been able to compete. But now with them spending their money on contracts that are not going to age well, again, just like we saw, 15 years ago. Kyle Schwarber's contract is probably not going to age well. JT Realmuto's 3rd year is probably going to be a disaster, like Taijuan Walker's 4th year, Castellanos' 5th year this year. Bryce Harper is going to be at the point where we're giving him a lot of money and probably not getting that level of production in return, which is okay because you pay these guys for the beginning of their contracts. But the needless extensions is where this front office is getting into trouble. And that's what frustrates me. That's what really frustrates me. One more comment here from Pedestrian X-Wing. Twice the Phillies had runners on the corners without any outs and couldn't get any of them home. That's the difference of the game. And yes, it is, right? Like when you strike out, that's going to happen. You strike out, and all of a sudden, you have runners on first and third with one out instead of no outs, and then you hit a ground ball, and it's a double play, and the inning's over, right? Like your ability to score is correlated to your ability to put the ball in play in those situations, right? Runners first and third, a ground ball is probably scoring a run, unless you hit it like right at the third baseman as hard as you can hit a ball, or unless you hit like an infield fly or something like that. Most times the ball's in play in that situation. A run is coming home, and those runs add up. You need to both be able to kind of be productive in that way, and you need the big fly to be able to put up crooked numbers that really get your score going up during the game. And it's just not there. It's just not there. And I see a lot of people also kind of talking about Rob Thompson, questionable decisions by him. I think this was an okay Thompson series. I think the Alvarado decision is kind of the big one that I'm concerned with, because his stuff is clearly not where it should be. I know that he really only had the one game that was bad against the Nationals. And, I mean, that was a really bad game. And I know he still has a decent amount of red on his Savant, but he has a decent amount of blue too. And unfortunately, I don't think Jose Alvarado is who he used to be at this point. So hopefully you all enjoyed that little segment of kind of going over some of the big Reddit comments. If you have any questions for future episodes, leave them on a Reddit thread. We can get to them there. Or if you go to the show notes, we have a link to our Discord server. We have a podcast channel there. And you can join that podcast channel and ask any questions that you want us to answer in future episodes, and we'll get to them. So that's exciting. Coming up, the Phillies welcome the Chicago Cubs to town. The Cubs, like I was saying, they're fresh off getting swept, but they have Javier Assad coming in on Monday night, going against Chris Sanchez. Colin Rea going against Aaron Nola on Tuesday night, and then Shota Imanaga against Jesus Luzardo on Wednesday night on Jackie Robinson Day. I think I feel okay going into this series, right? Like the Cubs are scuffling a little bit, just like the Phillies right now. The Phillies have probably their three best starting pitchers going in Sanchez, Nola, and Luzardo. I would like to see 2 out of 3. I would like to see 2 out of 3, but if you see 1 out of 3 and the Phillies are sitting at 8 and 10, that wouldn't surprise me, but it would really raise my concern. This next week, I think, is an early inflection point for this team as we kind of wait to see how this season goes. Anyways, that is, I think, just about everything that I have to say for this episode. So thank you all for listening. We will be back after this series against the Cubs. I have an off day on Thursday, so we'll either have an episode coming out Wednesday night or more than likely at some point on Thursday. So looking forward to getting that one out to you all. And we will talk to you then. Go Phils. Keep the faith, right? Like, I don't want Citizens Bank Park to finish with a toxic place. If you are going at any point in this upcoming series or any point soon, try to stay positive, right? Like, I think there's reasons to be concerned. Like I said, I've gone from monitoring the situation to being concerned about the situation, but I am not freaking out yet. I don't think it is time to freak out. And just try to enjoy this, right? Like, baseball, you don't have to have the best team in order to enjoy watching baseball. I loved watching the 2018 Phillies, and that was a team that honestly overperformed quite a bit, but it was just a fun team to root for. Young players, all that kind of stuff. Enjoy the good things. Take the good out of it. Seek the joy, and you'll find it over the course of a baseball season, no matter how good or bad that season may be. So, with that being said, thank you all once again, and we'll talk to you coming after the Cubs series.